This is a great speaker to follow, I think, Eric's talk. We have Dr. Noah Lenstra, who is Associate Professor of Library and Information Sciences at UNC Greensboro. He is also the founder of Let's Move in Libraries initiative, which focuses on supporting healthy living in public libraries through community partnerships. And in my former life when I was working, I was in book publishing, was a book designer, and I bike commuted to and from work. And so after I retired, I was looking at our library and reading about a couple of other libraries that checked out bikes to the public, and I thought it sounded like a great idea. And somebody gave me Noah's name, and I wrote him and asked him if he had any information on libraries that were doing this. And oh my gosh, he flooded me with information about that. But then I got on his email list, and every week he would send out something like news we need from this library or that library. And one of them was doing bike checkouts, and one of them was doing walks through historic neighborhoods, and one of them was doing food things to get their communities involved in healthy living that way. And I now have a folder on my hard drive it says Noah's folder, and when Carborough builds their new library, which is due to be finished next spring, I'm just going to slam them with all these things. So he's going to give us a lot more of these initiatives and things. And I just want to remind you all that Rowan County Libraries brought their book bike, and it's outside, and it's amazing, and everybody's going to want one in their community. So be sure to check it out after the talk. Noah Lenstra.
Great. Yeah. Oh, I got this. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Heidi. I really appreciate the invitation to be here, and like Heidi said, I'm going to be mostly talking about public libraries and how public libraries can kind of help and really be advocates for walkable, bikeable communities. But my hope is that also some of what I'll say today will be applicable for thinking about other work in terms of broadening coalitions, bringing more voices and more perspectives into the coalition work that we need. And I just want to make a quick shout out, as Heidi says, every day, the thing that I love about my job is that I get to learn about kind of the things that libraries are doing across North Carolina and across the country to make more walkable, bikeable, livable communities. And if you happen to drive, about half an hour north of here, in Statesville, North Carolina, with a whole slew of community partners, they're unveiling their new Story Walk, an installation that encourages families and children to get out walking and exploring while also reading a book posted along a walking trail. And so just one more quick story. If you were to read the news that I read, you would read in New Jersey last month they announced that the Department of Transportation awarded almost $380,000 to cover the costs of dramatically expanding pedestrian and bike access to a new public library in Montgomery, New Jersey. And as Deputy Mayor Nina Singh commented, Montgomery continues to build out safe linkages for our residents to our state-of-the-art library. My hope is that we will all enjoy the benefits of a more walkable community. And so you may be wondering why libraries, and I think there's just so many reasons why libraries are kind of at the heart of communities. And I think especially when we think about equity, one of the realities, and this is true almost anywhere in America that has an unhoused population, that unhoused population is going to be at libraries. So much so that if you're interested, the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless is actually having in October a webinar on library, schools, and transportation, the power of alliance building to support homelessness. And so I think there's just so many reasons why libraries can be and should be included in kind of the coalition work that we're all engaged in doing. And so one of the things that I've been, from an outsider, thinking about the expansion of the Safe Routes to School framework into Safe Routes to Parks, Safe Routes to Healthy Food. I think it's a logical next part to Safe Routes to Libraries. And so this is a kind of a logo that I kind of developed with some of my graduate students, but we're working with the Safe Routes Partnership to try to get this national model going, hopefully pretty soon. And so this is just kind of, to take a step back, this is the CDC's Connecting Activity-Friendly Routes to Everyday Destinations model that they released about 5 years ago. Many of you are probably familiar with it. But I really love how when they talk about everyday destinations, they talk about schools, libraries, work sites, homes, grocery stores, parks. And I think when I look at this and when I talk with people, I think libraries are often the missing link. I think libraries are rarely really involved in the conversation. And so I just encourage you to look at this list and to think about these and other everyday destinations. Where is your coalition work strong? Where do you feel like you really have the right people around the table? Where is it weak? Where is it non-existent? And really the million-dollar question, given how strapped everyone is for time and money, is how do we work smarter? How do we invest the limited time that we have to do the greatest good? And I'm going to talk a little bit about how libraries can help with that goal. And to do that, I want to take a trip to Western Kentucky, where Martha Emens believes bicycling can bring people together to improve bodies, minds, and communities. She works with city and school leaders promoting safe places to ride. And Martha, as part of that work, I had an opportunity to have a Zoom conversation with her during the pandemic. And so she owns a bike store. Like her job is a bike shop owner in Paducah, Kentucky, a town of about 25,000 people. But she's also worked continuously with the McCracken County Public Library in her coalition work since the late 1980s. And to my knowledge, one of the most longest standing kind of continuous involvement of a public library in this type of work. Going back at this point 30 plus years. And I asked her, like, why did you think to reach out to the library? Of all the possible partners that you could work with, why the library? And she talked with me about how growing up in Appalachia, her first job at the age of 14 was actually to ride the bookmobile and help people. And she saw firsthand the power of that, the power of the library in people's lives, not just as a space to get books, but a true lifeline, a true place and infrastructure that reaches people that otherwise wouldn't be reached. It's the one institution that is truly for everyone. Schools aren't for everyone. Churches aren't for everyone. Libraries are for everyone. And so what has she done with McCracken County Public Library over the years? Her first thing was to say, like, hey, May is Bike Month. You all want to have some Bike Month displays at the library? And they're like, sure. And then she noticed there was a lot of people, especially unhoused individuals, biking to the library, having no place to put their bikes. So she worked with them to get some bike lanes installed. And then she said, well, this bike rack that you put up isn't really anywhere close to the entrance. Can we take out a parking spot and put the bike rack closer? And they're like, sure, let's do that. They started checking out bike locks and cables so that if people bike to the library, park at the bike rack, now located adjacent to the library, they could actually get in a bike lock to secure it. Martha really made sure, as she did bike camp for kids every summer, that she actually took them behind the scenes in the library to help them understand what it actually means to be a librarian, because, spoiler alert, it's a lot more complicated than people imagine it to be. And things really transformed in 2013, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute. Things dramatically transformed in 2013 when Erin Lewis joined the staff. And Erin works in circulation for the library, but she's also an avid bicyclist. She's gone on like bicycle vacations, bicycling across Alaska. So now the library had a real ringer. They had an avid bicyclist on staff, and from there things went crazy in terms of the relationship. They started a couple years later having these monthly bike rides at the library. This is a picture of one of these library bike rides. And they found that like people were coming to the library that never, ever in a million years would come to the bike ride when they started and stopped at the bike shop. People with Huffies from Walmart wearing jeans and no helmets, and just dramatically different people than a bike ride at the bike shop. And also almost doubling the regular participation. Then in 2017, like the Rowan County Library, they acquired a book bike that they call Brary Bike, and Martha worked with the library to train 8 of their staff members to safely take it around throughout the city. And future goals are a bike checkout program. I guarantee the relationship is going to continue to evolve and expand as it has already evolved and expanded over the 30 years of its existence. And this is kind of where I want to just insert myself into the narrative. So one of the things that, why I got excited about this, so in 2016, at the tail end of the Obama presidency, I was really seeing former First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative. And you may recall the whole point of Let's Move was to try to think about, okay, how can we harness the totality of the federal government to make a difference in childhood health? And anyone you could imagine was involved in that, including museums. They did a whole thing with like botanical gardens and children's museums. Anyone you could imagine was involved in this, except for libraries. Literally, libraries were the one, there was nothing, like it was just completely invisible. And that's true locally, it's true nationally, and I'm like, F that, like we're gonna, like let's do something, let's move in libraries. And that's where it all began, like refusing invisibility. And so we worked to kind of bring libraries together, share resources, talk about what we were doing. And these are some of the librarians in Fulton County, Georgia, Michelle and Christy with their Let's Move in Libraries banner at the kickoff to their summer reading a couple years ago. And I think one of the reasons why librarians like myself are really interested in this is that the library workforce has dramatically changed over the last 20 years. And probably no better illustration of that is Nancy Pearl, America's action figure librarian, recently retired from the Seattle Public Library, has stayed in Seattle in her retirement largely because of how walkable Seattle is, because as it says here, she does almost all of her reading in the form of listening to audiobooks as she walks 7 to 10 miles a day throughout the city of Seattle. And so just a really vivid illustration of kind of the face of librarianship in 2023. And the people like Nancy and Aaron, Lindsay, David, people who really want to be involved in this work. And so I just want to just really quickly, since I am an academic, just talk a little bit about what public librarians do, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that work. And so I want to take a trip to Australia, of all places. And the year is 1975. And so the Australian government, they commissioned this report, a report to the nation on public libraries in Australia entitled, "Libraries are great, mate, but they could be greater." And this is a verbatim quote from a national policy document in 1975 that asks, what do public librarians do? What should the library do? And it says there is nothing that a community cannot do in its library if it sees the need and allocates the necessary priority, provided the state and the Commonwealth give it the necessary support. And I want to read this again, because I think a lot of people don't understand this. They don't understand what librarians do. What should the library do? There is nothing that a community cannot do in its library if it sees the need and allocates the necessary priority, provided the state and the Commonwealth give it the necessary support. So blue sky, like the doors are open, like you want to get something done in a community, get the librarians involved, and you're going to have a lot greater likelihood of it getting done than not having them in the room. And so these are some of the things that libraries care about. Like the number one thing that librarians care about is accessibility. We exist for everyone. We know that lots of people have trouble accessing the resources and expertise that we have. How can we make libraries more accessible? And in that kind of that vision of universal accessibility to libraries, there's a big focus on accessibility for bicyclists and pedestrians. A great illustration of this, Boise Library in Boise, Idaho, as part of a strategic plan to build a new library. They really had a big focus on walking and bicycle accessibility, planning for sheltered bike racks. So if people bike to the library, not only is there bike racks, but they also would have a cover to them, planning for integration with sidewalk and greenway infrastructure. And just, so how does this work happen? Like, this is kind of a great example. I love this model. I think oftentimes people, when they think about reaching out to libraries, they reach out to them for a very specific thing, like, hey, library, can you do this? But I think this is the best way if you want to get libraries involved. So in this town in Iowa, they got a $50,000 grant for a healthy eating, active living plan. And who's on the implementation committee? Who are the people tasked with working together to implement this healthy eating, active living plan? They have people you might expect, the director of public health, someone from the hospital, the recreation director. Oh, look, the library director, the Economic Development Association director, someone from the middle school. This is how you work with librarians. You don't kind of ask them to do something for you. You invite them in, and they will tell you what you should be doing. And also participate in the broader coalition work. I mean, that's what coalition work is inviting in and listening. And so I've been kind of like really building up understanding. Just on the research side, last couple of years, I'm just finishing up this national project. We went and did interviews with librarians and their partners in 18 communities across America to really understand kind of in pretty great detail what it looks for librarians to be kind of in the room where it happens, so to speak. And so as part of this work, we talked with people who work with librarians from nonprofits and hospitals, cooperative extension, businesses, schools, parks and recreation, just a wide array of the types of individuals who for various reasons find themselves in bed with librarians. So what does that look like? And what we really found is that for the vast majority of partners, there's a real come to Jesus moment in terms of that partnership. Before they start working with librarians, they really have no idea what librarians do. They think of libraries as literal book repositories, and if they do anything beyond check out books, it's going to be book related, like maybe a story time in a book club. As they get to learn a little bit more about libraries, they get to stage 2 where they start to see, oh, libraries are a trusted resource. There's a bunch of homeless people in the library. Like, why don't we put a social worker in there or have a cooking class? Just really focused on the physical space of the library and how to harness the fact that physical space is seen as a trusted resource. But for the real deep partnerships, they get to what I call stage 3, which shifts from the physical space of the library to the people who work in libraries, to the idea that librarians are critical partners. And so at stage 3, the real dominant process is we work together with librarians to figure out what to do in our communities. And so my challenge to all of you is to ask you, how can you get to stage 3 faster? How can you, rather than fiddle around with a bunch of misconceptions, just jump in and say, let's go to stage 3, let's do it across America, and let's see what happens. And so like I said, people often ask librarians, can you distribute something for me? Can you host an event for me? Can you market something for me? Can you do something for me? And what I've seen increasingly find success asking, well, what can we do together? How can we work together? I don't understand how you work. You probably don't understand how I work. Can we build some mutual understanding and figure out where we go from here? And that's true for most partners, especially partners that are underrepresented in kind of bike walk coalition work. And I think as you do that work, it's really important, as I've said a couple times, to recognize that libraries and librarians, the people who work in libraries, that profile of librarians is really changing and changing really fast. And I just want to give an example from my home in Greensboro, North Carolina. I went down to, and I saw Nicole from Bicycling in Greensboro. She was there as well. at the Wheels on the Greenway event as part of the Downtown Greenway kind of celebration, getting more people to use the Downtown Greenway in Greensboro, North Carolina. And so I was just down there with my family, and I happened to notice that a librarian was there, this woman, Kristen Mulvihill. And so I got to talking with her, and it turns out she just recently moved to Greensboro from working at San Diego Public Library. So she's only been in Greensboro for a year and a half, but she's like, oh, I definitely want to be at this bicycling event. Like, the library has to be there. And so it's a great example of kind of how library workforce is constantly changing. So I don't care, I really don't care what your relationship with the library was 10 years ago. That is irrelevant because there's new people there. There's new opportunities for partnership. There's new opportunities, and this is Kristen at the lower right there in the blue talking with some folks at the Wheels on the Greenway event. And so what I always tell people is that America's 17,000 public libraries collectively employ 145,000 individuals. Every single one of those people is a potential partner. Every single one. And these are kind of what librarians do. We have in Boston, Massachusetts, during a fierce nor'easter, librarians going out to put a story walk on a walking trail posted to a fence so that when kids go out walking, they're going to see stories in their environment in multiple languages. We have librarians out riding their bicycles, bringing resources to people. Every single one of these people is a potential partner. And so why would you want to invest your time building these partnerships? And I think one of the real reasons is that trust, not only in the physical space, but also in the idea of librarianship. So I talked with the head of a Main Street organization as part of my research, and I asked her, like, why do you always invite the librarian to come down to an event you're doing as part of your kind of downtown development work? And she told me when the book bike comes downtown, people are reminded that we have a bike trail system that allows the library, which is located 5 miles away, to come see us using their bike. Having a librarian ride their book bikes, they're wearing their gear, it really helps remind the public that everybody can be healthy. If the goddamn librarian can do it, surely I can. And so how do you get started? Where do you want to get started? And in a minute, I'm going to invite my colleague, Lindsay Maloney from the Rowan County Library to tell us a little bit about their book bike. But book bikes are really a great way to get the conversation going. I don't know any librarian who doesn't want to have a book bike. They have a lot of questions, they have concerns. It's like, how much is it going to cost? But like librarians, they most likely are going to need help sourcing the bike. Like, where do I get this from? I don't know anything about this. They probably will need help funding the bike. They're going to need some help figuring out how to maintain the bike. And finally, they're going to need some help safely riding the bike, especially if you have a bunch of staff, like in McCracken County. They might not feel comfortable having this giant thing, but with some help and support, they often do. Another great idea to get started is to work with librarians around story walks. And I saw some folks here from the Year of the Trail. The State Library of North Carolina has been an integral partner in kind of the Year of the Trail infrastructure. And their contribution has to create this interactive map constantly being updated of story trails or story walks located across the state of North Carolina, maintained either usually in partnership with public libraries. And so some of the things librarians need to do story walks, they need help identifying walking routes. Where would be, so if we have an eye towards equity, how could where are some places we could perhaps put a story walk that would increase equity? Maybe places in the community that are under-resourced. Librarians may or may not know that. They're not transportation professionals. You can help them figure out where to do this to promote equity. They may need some help actually installing the story walk. They may need some help maintaining it. And they may need some help promoting it. But this is another great way to kind of get the initial foot in the door, get the conversation going. And there's lots of promising examples, like you don't know where it's going to go. Once you get that foot in the door, you have no idea where it's going to lead you. In Oakland, California, it led to Oakland Public Library playing a key piece in the Oakland Bike Plan. And here we have Oakland Public Library Associate Director Nina Lindsay discussing the role of Oakland Public Library at the Oakland Department of Transportation's 2019 Oakland Bike Plan launch. Is this going to be you? I don't know. You're not gonna know until you kind of like start reaching out and see where it takes you. In Hoboken, New Jersey, they've worked to do complete streets awareness events. And Debbie Kingsland of the New Jersey Department of Transportation said, holding an awareness event like this as a public library is a great way to reach the people most affected by new transportation policies. And there's just so many, I could literally spend the entire day just sharing examples, but I just want to share just a couple more that I really like. In Portland, Oregon, the Multnomah County Library has worked with the Portland Department of Transportation for about, I think, 6 or 7 years now to do this Bike to Books initiative, and you can go to biketobooks.com to learn more. But it's just like kids, like summertime is gangbusters at libraries. School is out of session. The library tries to really engage children during summer. Any public librarian will tell you, don't ask me to do anything in June and July because it's all hands on deck at the library. And so, given the fact that libraries are these hubs of activity for young people during the summer, the Department of Transportation worked with them to do this initiative, like, why don't you have a coloring contest? And the winning coloring contest, we will physically put into the bike lane. And so that it's been hugely successful. It's kind of encouraged people to see the bike lanes as theirs. It's literally theirs. As Heidi said, lots of libraries are exploring kind of bike checkout programs. In Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, it's been a really successful partnership between the Bethlehem Health Bureau, the local health department, with some funding from a regional hospital. And I haven't said too much about it, but I grew up in a town of 3,500 people, and I like to just kind of play my rural American card by telling people, like, until the age of 18, like, I had no idea that when you go to a bank, like, people usually ask for your photo ID. Because I just, like, went to the bank and, like, people gave me money because they knew me or they knew my family or, like, but, like, I think there's just huge potential, especially in smaller towns and rural communities where the infrastructure is often weakest to non-existent, but librarians are there. And so if you're interested in rural, I'd really encourage this bike share and bicycle libraries in small communities. And I'm in touch with the author if you're interested in learning more. But they have some really in-depth examples of public libraries getting involved in bike share initiatives in rural communities in Vermont, Maine, Ohio, and Florida. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's happening. And so how do you get started? I mean, so the first thing is reach out, like who's in my area I can reach out to. In the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services, they have a really great kind of library search and compare dashboard so that you can kind of get a sense of at least like what libraries are around me. It's not going to get you contact information, but you can at least get that initial bearing, like what are the library branches near to me that I could be going to build the relationship. And then really go in like talking about your shared values, like what do you care about, like and ask them like, are these things that you care about as well? Like librarians really want to do a lot of outreach right now. We know that we need to meet people where they are, like Lindsay meets people where they are with their book bike. So think about that outside programming. Eric, when you were talking about programming, I think librarians are really great programming partners to do things, especially in underserved parts of America with story walks and little free libraries, book bikes. Libraries do a lot of programming. I've seen libraries do a lot of walk audits, doing walking school bus, where the walking, like if you do a safe routes to school, maybe start at a library and people can walk together to the school. So they're interested in accessibility. How can we make the library more accessible by maybe having bike locks that people can check out? Like you bike to the library, it's like, damn it, I forgot my bike lock. Oh, I can just go in and get one. That's increasing accessibility. And just really like everyone else, like libraries have been hit hard during COVID-19. So just, yeah, like how have you fared during the pandemic? It's been rough for me. How about you? And just once you kind of start to build that rapport, like think about where it can take you. Like I said, like there's been a lot of great like walk audit work. This is an example from a small town in Louisiana, where the LSU Cooperative Extension worked with one of the Paris libraries to do a Lake Providence walk audit. As the library's kind of promotional material says, join us for a walk audit to help make Lake Providence safer for all road users in the community. And share what you do to inspire others. Librarians are often extremely hyper-local. They're charged and paid by local government to do things at the local level. And one consequence of that is they are not very good at sharing kind of with a broad audience like what they're up to. So share. If you do something with your library, share it out like to inspire others. And this is just an example from the Safe Routes Partnership, their website about they worked with the Central Arkansas Library System to do a walk audit at one of their branches, which ended up kind of dramatically expanding kind of the infrastructure to enable people to walk and bicycle to this location, and ended up with the library getting an almost $1 million grant to build out some of the pop-up infrastructure that they had initially talked about doing. So share out, share with others. And so really, even though I've been talking about libraries, I mean, you could insert kind of other kind of under-considered potential partners and communities. And really the question is, how can we expand and mobilize our coalition by setting aside our preconceived ideas of how our communities work, how community institutions work, because when you go down to it, it's just people in a room, and how do you expand the people in the room to get the work done? And I think at this point, I'm going to ask Lindsay to come up and share with us just a little bit about the work that she's done in her library around the book bike, and then we'll open things up for kind of question and answer.
Hello, I'm Lindsay. I am the Adult Services Supervisor at headquarters and the West Branch Supervisor out in Cleveland. We got the book bike, I have some notes because I'm not very good at memorizing things, in last summer, and it was part of the State Library of North Carolina Bright Ideas Grant, which is funded in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services that Noah just talked about. And that grant allowed us to get the bike, all of the safety things that we needed for, like the helmets, the other umbrella, the locks for it, all that kind of fun stuff, as well as a trailer that allows us to take it if the event that we need to go to is a little bit further than we want to bike that thing. So we got it from Icicle Tricycle, and that's the company who made it, and they do all kinds of like those container bikes. Some people have seen them like at the beaches. People do like they serve some food stuff out of it, that kind of thing. But this one that we have out there is specifically for books and for libraries, and it was built and designed for that. And as Noah said, it's all about access. It lets us go where people can't come to us. If they don't want to come to us, if they don't know that we exist, it puts us out into the communities. And it's a unique and fun and engaging way to do that. It's not just setting up a table at an event, which is great, but that's a great conversation starter. We drive that bike down the road and people are pulling one of those double takes. That fits into one of our big strategic plans, is that fun and creative ideas for programming. So the bike has that big container on the front of it, and we can put books in there. That's the obvious thing that we can do. We can take it out places, let people check out books. But it also has enough space that we can do like a program. So when the kids signed up for summer reading at the Cheerwine Festival, they had I believe they had like a craft activity that they could just did, so it was all out in there. And it also allows us to have a laptop there, so we can do on-demand digital access, whether that's with one of our resources. They need access to something that they don't know how to get access to. We can walk them through it. Everybody needs to know how to use a computer, so we can answer a lot of those questions on the spot, on demand right there. So like I said, we went to the Cheerwine Festival. It was right outside the library, so we brought it outside, and we had kids signing up for summer reading. We have taken it to one of my librarians, David. He's outside with the bike. He took it on a group walk, a group hike, and he rode the bike out to the park where they had it, and they had a food drive. So it was kind of a dual effort. And then he, rode the bike back to the library with all the food, and we donated it to the local food banks. So that's kind of the fun things that we've done with it so far. We went to like a community connections event, and it's a great spot just to have what the library has available there at the time, the calendars, the programs, the assistants, and all that kind of fun stuff. Specifically for like that one was a health event, so we had all of our health resources and health databases and books like that. So it really allows us to specialize in whatever the topic is of the event. So we definitely want to increase our use of it. I know as everybody has with the pandemic and everything, we've been kind of stretched and pivoting all left and right, so it is a goal to do that more in the future. So for events like this, events in the community, we would love to bring it out there as well as, taking it just for a bike down the street just to see if we can get some attention. And yeah, that's our book bike. It's out there. We'll be here till about 1 o'clock if you want to come take a look. Get all up close and personal with us, ask any questions. And that's one way that our public library is moving in libraries.
Yeah, well, you can keep, no, Lindsay, yeah, stay here.
Stay here, okay.
Yeah, we'll do some Q&A, but before we open things up, I just want to make a quick plug. If you don't already know, the League of American Bicyclists, their National Summit is going to be at the DC Public Library's main location in 2024. DC Public Library was also the host of the Washington Region Vision Zero Summit in June of 2023, and at that Vision Zero Summit, there was actually 2 librarians talking about their book bike and how they use their book bike to promote equity and access. So, yeah, lots of good stuff happening. More down the pike. And yeah, so I think we have some time for question and answer and discussion. Yeah, do in the front, please.
Yeah. Hey,
Oh, you might need the mic actually. Sorry.
Hey, Eric, Trips for Kids Charlotte and Charlotte Recyclery. I love what you said about breaking down perceived kind of like silos and working together, getting creative, and creating an ecosystem of how we can all support resources for all of our community. I have kind of 2 questions. Definitely I love hearing about the library being a resource, an entity, a tool. I also see bicycles as a tool. I also see infrastructure as a tool. And to use tools, you kind of have to be educated, right? So the 2 questions I have is, 1, what are some, if there are any, or if you've observed, ways that we can educate the community on the tools of using infrastructure? And then the second question, since we have a community bike shop, definitely you said a goal of a bicycle library. Mm-hmm. Besides the actual bikes themselves, what are some barriers that you guys can see or have learned from doing research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll just really quickly, and Lindsay, feel free to jump in, but in terms of how libraries can be used to kind of teach people about the power of infrastructure, one of the things that I really love are kind of some of the amazing placemaking work that libraries are doing and have done. One of my favorites is in San Diego. The San Diego Public Library has work to do kind of like, creative use of their parking lot. Like, let's just shut down our parking lot. Like, it's not just a place for cars, it's a place for fun. And they did that like this demo. I mean, it's basically like a demo. Like, what would it look like if our parking lot were a place for fun and not just a place for cars? And it was so successful that they actually essentially took out a parking lot at one of the branches. It's like, we don't actually need this. We don't need this parking lot. And now we have this great outdoor space. So I think, working with librarians around kind of placemaking initiatives, I think is probably the best way that I would recommend in terms of thinking about how can we use the kind of educational role of the libraries to work with others to say, like, our infrastructure is not fixed. We can modify it, we can tinker with it, we can play with it, we can imagine what a different built environment would look like. So that's probably what I would recommend. And I missed your second question, I'm sorry.
The second question is, other than the actual access to the bicycles themselves, in creating bicycle libraries in libraries where you can rent bicycles, what are maybe some other barriers or things that you've come across?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay hasn't, but I mean, I think a big one is just, I mean, libraries are public entities, so there can often be a lot of strange kind of risk management, liability issues that come up, and so I think if you were to broach that conversation of a bike library, you definitely want to think about, okay, so who are, I mean, and often it's just appeasing. Like what I've seen with libraries that are successful, like the one in Bethlehem, it's just enough to say, like, there's other libraries doing this, because oftentimes risk managers, especially in cities, they'll be like, we're not going to touch that in a million years. Somebody's going to fall on this bike through the city, like, so I think, yeah, just talking through some of those. And Lindsay and I actually had a similar conversation a minute ago. Like, I think someone came up to Lindsay and is like, hey, can a volunteer ride your book bike? And the answer is currently no, because, like, again, liability, like a public entity, public infrastructure. But some libraries have developed really successful kind of volunteer book bike. There's a library in Arizona that their book bike is almost exclusively used by volunteers. But again, it's like being able to talk, like, I mean, public entities, public infrastructure, public rules, and just, yeah, thinking about, like, yeah, talking through that and thinking about, like, yeah.
Is there any libraries that you know that have kind of just a renting membership to an existing bike share?
Yes, in fact there are, yeah. So a lot of the B-Cycle, like, like communities that have B-Cycle, like I know in Omaha and Madison and a couple other cities, like you can check out like passes that you can use, like if the city has like a fleet of bicycles, so you can get a pass from the library to kind of, check it out without having to purchase a membership. So I've definitely seen that. Yes, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons libraries love that, because they're not responsible for the bicycles. Like somebody else is maintaining the bicycles. They're just kind of a conduit to access. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, this is Dave Campbell with Charlotte DOT. Maybe more of a comment than a question, although I'm going to phrase it in the form of a question. But I want to start off by saying this was not planned, but feeling really proud to be wearing the original Scraper Bike T-shirt, and thanks for mentioning Oakland Public Libraries.
Yeah.
That was my previous position, where we helped establish a community bike shop at the 69th Avenue Library there. And when we did, I got to cook the barbecue. Not as good as the barbecue we get here in Carolina, but I did my best, and sold these shirts to the public there. And oh, sorry. And so they also have the bookmobile is what they call it, but the bike book, the book bike, sorry. I think they have multiple ones there. And what we found there was when we were doing community outreach on any kind of a street project or a transportation project or even a community project, the book bike would come out. And what even the parents in the neighborhood didn't realize is there's bikes everywhere. They might be in someone's garage, someone's attic, in the ditch, that need a lot of repairs. It wasn't so much the lack of bikes, it's just the lack of a good bike mechanic and a good bike shop. So the book bike there coming to these community events was huge, because there's kids everywhere, and they know where these bikes are, and they would show up. And all of a sudden, we're getting bikes repaired, and kids are on those bikes. And so I'm getting to my question, trying to get there as quickly as I can, is when kids are on a bike and parents are in the room while the kids are on the bike, the conversations would change. And from my perspective, they would get better, because there's this commonality of everyone seeing young kids on bikes. And so even residents who didn't know the resident who lived around the corner, but they both had young kids on bikes, and having that experience, whatever conversation they were having would get way better. So that's my question is, are you seeing that with the book bikes here in North Carolina, that it's not just a conversation about better bicycling or what that's doing for the kids, but how that's helping the conversation grow and develop a better set of solutions for the neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a great question, and Lindsay, you might speak to some of the impacts you've seen from the book bike. But I would say, just from my kind of national vantage point, I think here in North Carolina, we're definitely the book bike movement is not not super broad yet. Like, I mean, it really developed first in kind of the western states like Arizona, California, Washington. There's huge room for expansion. I don't know if we know enough about the impacts that it's having, but Lindsay, do you want to speak about some of the impacts you've seen?
Yeah, so I think for me, like I said, when David drove that bike down the street to the park for that hike event, people were double taking, people were stopping, they were stopping him, asking questions, and it truly made it like a community topic, a discussion point for just that street that he was driving down that day. And at the Community Connections event that we went to, you know, of course we utilized the bike for it, but it opened up the conversation. You know, what else do libraries do? What else can we do there? You know, and the kids were all around it. You're right, it draws kids everywhere. You know, it's a magnet for them. But what I think is important is that it shows, like, because we have to, because of all of the liability that we were talking about, we have to have all of the safety equipment on when we're driving the bike, like especially the helmet. They have it all available, you know, depending on people's level, because that bike is real hard to steer. So depending on the comfortability of the librarian. And so it shows and it teaches everybody that bike safety is also important. And so it opens up broader conversations than just the bike. It opens it up the conversations about safety and whatever the topic we might be, because we can narrow that focus of that bike to whatever event or what goal is. If we're just doing community outreach, or if we're going to an event, we can match the people where they are with what they need, and it just broadens conversations. That's what we have definitely seen.
Got time for just one more here?
Hi, so I'm coming here from Durham, North Carolina, where we have a beautiful library downtown. And our library also has a relationship with the bike community by way of bike clinics that our local bike co-op runs at the library. So my question for y'all, which relates somewhat to the first question that was asked, but sort of expounding on that a bit. Our library's placement in town is in a very awkward spot where it's right along a very busy road, the Roxborough Street Speedway, for those that are familiar with the area, cars flying down at 40 miles an hour. And so it faces this unique issue of a lack of connectivity. And so obviously the infrastructure needs to be addressed through our local government and through those forces. But I wanted to ask what steps you're seeing in your research that are being taken in instances where the physical placement of libraries is inhospitable to pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah. No, that's a really great question. And I'll just back up. So I'd really encourage, like, and you can take a photo of this, like this blog post from the Safe Routes Partnership. It goes over, like, almost the exact example that you're discussing about. So Little Rock, Arkansas, they built this amazing children's library, beautiful. They wanted to do a story walk, so they got an America Walks Community Challenge grant to do a story walk. But in the process of working with America Walks, they really realized, like, it is almost impossible for people to get to our library unless they drive there. Like, we're right by an interstate. Like, there's a great park across the interstate, but, like, we have this interstate. Like, and so they really worked after they kind of had that initial relationship with America Walks. They got really well connected to kind of transportation planners and some of the funding available for that. Did walk audits, did like pop-up demonstrations where they would close lanes of traffic just to do like pop-up demonstrations. What would it look like if we took out this lane in front of the library? How would that increase accessibility? I mean, it's just an amazing story of a library that went from like almost no accessibility to one that's, I mean, still has work to do. I mean, it's still not perfect, but miles. So it's a really great story of kind of how that relationship, and this was actually just an aside, like, so the funding mechanism was actually through the Safe Routes to Parks, because there's a lot of infrastructure now around Safe Routes to Parks, so the initial hook was saying, like, our library is here, our parks are here, how can we construct a safe route to our park? But when they started doing that with the Safe Routes Partnership, those people at the National Safe Routes Partnership, it's like, why aren't we talking about safe routes to libraries? And that really opened the door to that. So yeah, I've kind of talked around your question, but I think, yeah, I think there's, I'd probably honestly just encourage you to maybe think about like, I mean, I would guess some of the librarians are probably familiar with, and so maybe just brainstorming, intimately familiar, I mean, as often it's just brainstorming and conversations and thinking about like could we close down a lane of traffic for, I don't know, a day, maybe even a day, like just do like we're going to close down a lane of traffic and have some fun activities for kids just to like show people what it would look like to take a lane out or something like that.
Could you consider this question as a formal opens records request for that original successful grant application so that we can all basically plagiarize it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lindsay, I can get it. Like it was a state library. Yeah, I think it is on the State Library of North Carolina's website. But yeah, I can definitely email it to you, and yeah, we can definitely get you a copy of that grant for sure. Yeah, and just be in touch. Like, I mean, you have my contact information. Like, I mean, I'm sure I think Lindsay has some cards. And so I know we're out of time, and so I would encourage everyone to go talk to Lindsay and David, and yeah, get their grant application and spread it around. Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
All right, great. Thank you.